you, me sitting on top of it, it's even more thrilling than that.
Hello, I'm Jon McBride, a retired captain in the United States Navy and a retired astronaut. I was very fortunate to be chosen in the very first class of space shuttle astronauts. Everybody that came before me was, I call them old timers, even older than me, were the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo astronauts. So I was in the very first class of folks, men and women, who were chosen to fly the new thing then called space shuttle. Space shuttle was a reusable spacecraft. The Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo were expendables. We only flew them that one time and they were gone, but the space shuttle was designed to fly many, many missions. And I was fortunate to be in that very first class of space shuttle astronauts chosen to train for and fly the space shuttle. I got to fly the space shuttle myself, had the first crew of 7 astronauts. Normally, in the Apollo day or the Mercury days, there was 1, the Gemini had 2, and the Apollo had 3 people, but with the advent of the space shuttle, we could carry 6 or 7 or 8 people on each flight, and I was very fortunate to be the pilot of the flight that took the first crew of 7 into space, which turned out to be the nominal crew size for the majority of the space shuttle flight. So it's a wonderful mission. 7 people. The first flight with 2 women, Sally Ride and Kathy Sullivan, the first Australian, first Canadian, most importantly the first West Virginian, that's me, to go into space. So it was a very exciting flight. We were up there 8 days. We were what you would call an Earth observations mission. We went up there to study the Earth from space. So we had satellites on board that would conduct different studies of the Earth's texture and composition, and give us a real good eye of what this mother planet of ours called Earth is all about. So it was a very exciting Earth observation mission, and we not only accomplished all of our goals and objectives, but some that were on the standby list. So you would say that with great pride that it was one of the most successful flights in the flight history of the space shuttle program. So I'm very fortunate to have gotten to do that. My second flight, I was scheduled to be the commander of the flight that would have immediately followed the Challenger tragedy, which I did not get to fly that flight. I was asked one morning by the President of the United States if I would come up to Washington and be the associate administrator of NASA after the tragedy. So that's can't say no to a guy like that. So I spent 2.5, almost 3 years in Washington, D.C. as the assistant administrator. My job was to work with Congress. I spent most of my days on the Hill working with the congressmen and the senators, forging NASA's budgetary requirements and making sure that we got enough money in the budget cycle to do all the things that NASA wanted to do. And it was a time-consuming, I would say almost a 16-hour-a-day job for 5 or 6 or 7 days a week. So felt very rewarding having done that job, to see that NASA got its budgets and NASA got to do virtually all the things that we had planned for and wanted to do during those years of my congressional activity. So I guess looking back, I would say that I got to do a lot of different things with NASA, not only flying space shuttles, but also working as an administrator and a bureaucrat. So it was a well-rounded 15 or 16 years at NASA. Looking back, I can't think of much I would change. Of course, if I could erase the terrible tragedies that we incurred with our shuttle program, I would obviously do that. But space is a very dangerous business. And all of us that get into this profession understand the risks that are involved. And all of us, to the man and woman, are eager to accept those challenges and move on and do some great things with our space shuttle program. So I was very proud to be an instrumental part of that program. And I just hope that the future of space is bright, and that many young men and women like myself have the opportunity to fly in space.
Captain McBride, thank you very much for your insightful introduction. We now have received a few questions that were forwarded by some students or members of the Phi Theta Kappa Society. And here we go. We'll start with the first question. Who do you look up to for inspiration or mentorship?
Wow, I guess got to go back to my early years. I always was respectful of my parents and the senior members of my family. I had a wonderful family who all joined together and helped me do a lot of the things that I got to do. So respect for your family is a very important thing, family members. And I had a lot of good friends who were inspirational to me, and my teachers. I can almost remember every teacher I had since the first grade in elementary, and the impression that they made on me. To stay in school, study hard, and do all the right things. It stuck with me, I guess you could say, because I loved my schooling years. I loved being in class, and I loved doing the homework and all those types of things. So as I would encourage all the youngsters listening to me to, number one, do that homework. You can make it fun by being ready to go to class the next day and share your experiences and know that you've learned something overnight. So never got tired of learning, never got tired of studying. I guess it might be a kind of strange thing to say, but it was one of the things I really enjoyed most was my schoolwork. And I would encourage all the youngsters listening to me to do as well as you possibly can in school, because that is the basis of the rest of your life.
Captain McBride, what do you see in the future of space travel?
Obviously, the future I like to think about revolves around going to Mars. We haven't been there yet. So I hope I live long enough to see that happen. It's going to take a lot of concentrated effort on the part, probably not only of the United States, but the partners that may join in, take a role in going to and exploring our sister planet Mars, and bringing, most importantly, bringing those human beings back to Earth. So it's going to be a monumental task. And hopefully if we get started here in the next year or two, it's going to take 5 or 10 years to pull that evolution off. So it's not an overnight thing. It's going to take a lot of dedicated effort, probably not only by we here in America, but by our partners to lift off and travel to Mars and explore Mars and come back to Earth. So once again, I hope I live long enough to see it.
Third question. Looking back through your career, what is the most important risk you took and why?
Well, I think obviously the biggest risk I took was to venture off into space, But once again, it's a dangerous situation. It's fraught with all kinds of possible, letdowns and problematic. But you got to learn from the best way to learn is to practice. And we, in the space program, for a space mission, we practice many times everything we're going to do in space. So hopefully when you get there and encounter the real situation, everything will flow smoothly. And if you run into problems, your training will bring out a solution to that problem. So space travel is a very unique thing, a very demanding thing to do. So it takes a lot of training and a lot of preparation in order to carry out a space mission.
Question number 4. What are the most important traits in a leader's career?
I think obviously the number one and most important trait for a leader is honesty. You got to be honest not only with yourself, but with every dealing and every person you come in contact with. Be forthright, tell the truth always. And one of the things I always remembered was if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember what you said. So by telling the truth all the time, you're always out front. You never have to worry about what you said, so always tell the truth.
After the Challenger disaster, you served as congressional liaison. How did you keep your team motivated during this difficult time?
That was a pretty difficult time in NASA's history after we lost our Challenger, and it took a lot of effort on everybody's part to reconstruct and come back to life and start all over again, so to speak. So it was a building block approach. Let's start at the basics and go through all of our training and scenarios and make sure we're training correctly, and then followed up with the training, actual training, and really motivation to all the people to be aware of what we're doing and don't let this happen again, because it was a terrible time period in our history of our space program. We lost that Challenger. But we came back and we were stronger and better and did bigger and better things. And the space program is always going to be around. It's a sort of a basic block in our civilization right now is space exploration. So I think looking into the future is going to be bigger and brighter.
Question number 6. What goes through your mind while you're strapped in and waiting for liftoff?
Well, while you're sitting there on top of those thousands of gallons of liquid fuel and hundreds of pounds of solid fuel, you're hoping that it goes well, everything works. So all these thousands of moving parts and pieces and parts of this spacecraft work, and they work in unison, they work the way that they're built to work. And of course, you're relying upon your training. You're hoping that everything that you've lived and dealt with over the training cycle will come into play. Then if anything goes wrong or you have any problems with any of these parts or processes, that everything that you learned will help you get through it. So that's why we spend hours and hours and hours practicing in the simulators, going through every possible scenario of what could fail, how it could fail, and what we could do to make it better and make it workable so that we could continue the mission, hopefully complete the mission and come back and do all the things that we had planned on doing.
And we have a final question, which is, how long did you know that this was the career you wanted? And how were you able to keep your focus on your career goal?
I think it was something I wanted to do since I was a teenager probably, and we started flying men and women into space. It grabbed my attention, got me excited about math and science, and one of the reasons that I studied math and science and engineering in college was because I was infatuated with America's space program. I, of course, like every other young man, wanted to do that, but what are the odds of doing it? Well, they're very small. But I came from a little coal mining town in West Virginia, and I had a small chance of doing what I got to do, and I will encourage every one of you listening to me to take the example that I had and go make it happen. You can make it happen no matter where you're from, what you do, what your educational background is, who your parents are. It's all up to you, and it depends on you and how hard you want to work to make your dreams come true. And I'm one of those people that firmly believe in that if you really believe you want to make it happen, you can make it happen.
This concludes the question and answer portion of this video. Thank you to the member society of the Society Phi Theta Kappa for sending their questions, and most importantly, thank you, Captain McBride, for participating and illuminating with all your answers.
And thank you very much.
Thank you.